Hey everybody, what's up? This is Brian with GamesUnderPressure.com, and we did it. We're here. We're at the end of 2014. It's a little bit hard to believe, but we got through the crazy rush of fall games. I don't know about you, but I have a crazy backlog of titles that I have to get to. And now that we're here at the end of the year, I thought it's a good time to look back on some of the trends, some of the positive trends, and some of the negative trends that we've seen in 2014. So first, I want to talk about some positive things. The indie game community is just doing better stuff than they've ever done. Every year, we hear pundits get up and say, well, there's going to be an indie game bubble, and this can't last, and so after a while, some of the creativity is going to fall off, some of the demand for some of these indie games is going to fall off, and the bubble's going to burst. And what we've seen in 2014 is the exact opposite. We've seen some of the most creative games, I think, of any year for indie games, and in fact some indie games actually being so good that they impact larger AAA, maybe even annualized franchises. So 2014, just look at some of the titles. Shovel Knight is on many Game of the Year lists. It's just an incredible sort of throwback title that really, it blew me away, and I know it blew a lot of other people away. You have games like Towerfall Ascension, and now Towerfall came out on the Ouya in 2013, but Towerfall Ascension is bold, and it was just a really great addition to PSN this year. And then you have a game like This War of Mine, which just came out. It's getting great reviews. It's on Steam right now. But here is a game that puts really like the narrative in the hands of the player, and it creates this emotional story, tells this emotional story. So the indie scene has just been incredible in 2014. I don't see that stopping. There are some really cool games coming up in 2015, and I hope it doesn't. And a matter of fact, I hope that more larger companies like Ubisoft and EA take what some of the indie games have done, if not the core mechanics, but just the ideas driving a lot of these games, and implement those into some of the more annualized franchises like Assassin's Creed. To spruce it up a little bit. So, secondly, this console war between the PS4 and the Xbox One, and to a certain extent the Wii U, has really helped gamers. And it's helped gamers because all of these companies now are in a race to the bottom in terms of pricing. So we've seen just in 2013, just about a year ago, both consoles launch. The PS4 was $400 and the Xbox One was $499 with the Kinect. And in that time, and just especially lately with all the Black Friday and Christmas deals, the consoles are so incredibly cheap. I don't remember any other generation where the console prices dropped as quickly as they did, as precipitously as they did. And this is crazy, and it's great for the gamers. If you look at right now, you can get an Assassin's Creed Xbox One bundle for $329. It has Black Flag and Unity in it. Now, a lot of people, aren't, including myself, aren't huge fans of Unity, but that's still a really, really, really good deal. There are a lot of crazy PS4 bundles with The Last of Us and GTA. So right now, even though the consoles are only a year old, it is a great time to be a gamer. It's a great time to be in the market for some of these consoles. Now, if you're like me and you were an early adopter, perhaps you're a little bit bitter about that, and maybe you have some right to be. I don't know, but I just think it's great for the industry. I think more people now, because the barrier to entry is so low, more people are able to experience these games. A larger customer base, a larger addressable market means that companies can make the move to current gen a little bit faster than they could with previous gen. I mean, we've seen in previous generations where they'll still, companies sort of straddle the generations for maybe a year, 2 years, sometimes even more, trying to eke out as much money out of these titles as they possibly can. Now that people are jumping onto the PS4, jumping onto the Xbox One in record numbers at an all-time low price, I think that is great for the industry, and I hope to see that race to the bottom continue, because gamers are the only people who really benefit from that, and that's great. So another trend is just great console exclusives. And I think everybody knew this was going to happen this year, because at the beginning of console generations, with the Xbox One just coming out, the PS4 just coming out, that is when companies really go crazy with their IPs, come out with new things, hoping that it's going to be the new Halo, it's going to be the new Gears of War, whatever it is, the new Uncharted for this current generation. And we've seen some really great titles by all three companies. Games like Titanfall, games like Infamous, games like Forza Horizon 2, games like Bayonetta 2, which is on many people's Games of the Year list as well. and games like Sunset Overdrive, which are really sort of out there and a break from the traditional sort of norm. And so yeah, just getting a lot of these great console exclusives, giving people a reason to buy one box over another, and really competing for that market share. That has been great. I hope it continues. I hope we see a lot of new IPs coming into 2015. Hopefully that'll just spur the industry a little bit. Now, another trend that I am sort of happy to see is delays. And you might be saying, well, delays are never a good thing, are they? Well, I think 2014, more than any other year in history, has shown us that games launching before they're ready are a really, really, really bad thing. And that's a trend that I'm going to be talking about in a few minutes. But just companies that are willing to delay their products for the betterment of that product, I think are a great thing. And we've seen some really high-profile delays this year. We saw games like Dying Light, games like Evolve, games like Battlefield Hardline that probably could have launched this year and launched in a state that was not that great. And instead of putting out a mediocre product, the companies held on to that and are taking a chance by releasing it. Like a Dying Light is coming out in January. That's a time that you don't really expect a lot of games to launch, but the publisher, the developer, they're willing to take that risk, and I think that speaks volumes. And I'd like to see more games get delayed instead of being pushed out into in a state that really doesn't help anybody. A state that really honestly pisses people off, people like me who were excited about Master Chief Collection, things like that. Now, finally, the last positive trend, are just companies listening to the consumers, doing what the consumers want. And that sounds really sort of basic, doesn't it? I mean, obviously companies want to make their customers happy, but in the games industry, a lot of the time, you don't really get that. And so when you have a company like Microsoft really course correcting from some tragic and some very poor messaging earlier in this year and late 2013, and really course correcting and doing a 180 and making the customer happy. And you can see that especially with Microsoft in some of the dashboard updates, removing the Kinect from the box, something that a lot of people thought was superfluous and sort of unnecessary, dropping that price by $150. So those are all really great things. I'd like to see those trends continue. Now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the negative trends in 2014. And unfortunately, 2014 has seen its fair share of issues. There have been some controversies. There have been some overwhelmingly negative happenings. And these are things that I hope end with this year, but things that probably won't. And chief among those concerns is the launch of the broken game. Games that are launching in a state that they shouldn't be launched in. Products that are either incomplete, haven't been tested correctly. Things that really screw people out of $60. And perhaps even more frustrating than just the launch of a broken game is the launch of a long-term broken game. And this is a trend that we saw starting with Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 largely, where a game is not broken for a day, it's not broken for 2 days or a week or even a month. These are games that are broken over the long term, 5, 6, maybe even more months of inoperability. And the game that comes to mind, I think, the most shining example of this year is unfortunately Drive Club. I'm recording this now a few months after the game was released, and there's still issues with it. It's still not 100%. A game like the Master Chief Collection, which was personally my most anticipated game of the year. And this is a game that a lot of people were excited for. A lot of people bought. It sold well over 1 million copies. And it's a game that should not have been released. It's been a month now. They still can't get games matched up regularly. There are a lot of issues, even with the single-player progress being deleted, things like that. So that is an overwhelmingly negative trend that I've seen this year, and I think a lot of people have seen. And it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the developer. It doesn't help the publisher, because a lot of people are going to be skittish the next time a game like that, a game with that same name comes out. It doesn't help the consumer who feels ripped off. There are no winners in this situation. So I hope game publishers and game developers, they hold on to those games, they cook them a little bit longer, and don't release them until they're ready to be released. A second negative trend are social media bullies. And this is not just in games. I mean, this is everywhere, but it really came to light this year with Gamergate. And you might have different opinions on Gamergate. I think everybody sort of has a different opinion on why it was started and why it continued and things like that. But I don't know of anybody who defends some of the hatred that was spewed on social media. Some of the very targeted hatred with death threats, bomb threats, threats on people's safety. And there's really no excuse for that. And I am all for maybe a re-examining of ethics in games journalism, and all journalism, really. And maybe it's time to take a look at that. Maybe it's not, I don't know. But when you start getting into some of the targeted threats, some of the really nasty hatred that's being spewed on social media in the name of journalistic ethics and things like that, I think that needs to end. And I think it needs to end very, very quickly, because it's just divisive. It doesn't solve any issues. It doesn't bring any issues to light. It's just completely unnecessary. So, and that's probably endemic of a much larger issue with internet anonymity just in general. But for the most part, that is a trend that I'd like to see gone, and I think it's a trend that a lot of people would like to see gone. And finally is the idea of annualized games. And now, I'm not against annualized games. I don't think a lot of other people are against annualized games. And the proof of that is just in their sales numbers. Assassin's Creed sells like crazy. Call of Duty sells like crazy. These games sell. People buy them. Madden sells like crazy. FIFA sells like crazy. So a lot of people obviously don't have issues with it. But my issue is not with the annualized game as a concept, because a lot of these studios, like with Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed in particular, they're moving to 3 studio models. So the studio will have 3 years to work on some of these titles. So you get titles that are of a higher quality, even though you didn't really get that with Assassin's Creed Unity this year. But the concept of an annualized game without major changes. And that's what gets me. I'd be more than happy to play an Assassin's Creed every single year if the gameplay was a little bit different from year to year. And right now, we're not really seeing that. I think we saw it a little bit with Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. That was a game that really sort of mixed up the movement in that title. But I'd like to see even more innovation there. And if you're going to expect me to buy an annualized franchise, that's fine, but you got to mix it up. And this year, I don't know if there was enough of that to justify a lot of these purchases. So that about does it for my list of positive and negative trends in 2014. But I'm curious to know what you see as some of the positive and negative trends. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, check out our podcast, which posts every single Monday. It's called The Pressure Cast. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, or right here on YouTube. And we're going to be going over all the new releases every single week, all the news. We got some really cool stuff coming up this week. The PlayStation Experience is on Sunday, and the Game Awards are actually today as I'm recording this. So there will be some really great news, and you can get some analysis on the Pressure Cast. As always, check out Colin's First Hour series, where he plays almost all of the new releases of the week, gives his opinions on those. So that sort of goes back to the broken game thing. If you want to know if a game is working, if you want to know if it's worth buying, definitely check out some of those First Hour videos. And please rate and subscribe. All right, thanks for watching.